Hello everybody and welcome to another exciting episode of the Jack the Lad podcast. On today's episode we've got on Liam. Welcome.
How you doing, mate? You okay?
Yeah, good. You?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Obviously I've got you on the podcast as I do many of my guests through social media and coming across obviously your powerlifting.
Yep.
Do you want to just tell us, how it all started and, issues and all the rest of it like that, and then I'll come in with questions as we go.
Perfect, yeah. So in regards to Para Powerlifting, it started shortly after I had a spinal cord injury in 2017. There's an event for all spinal units up and down the country called the Interspinal Games, which is held at Stoke Mandeville Stadium in down south somewhere. Yeah. And so it's basically when all the spinal units come together and they compete in various different sports, and it's basically trying to enrich the depth of athletes in Paralympic pathway sports and almost like a talent ID, and also giving people that have just suffered life-changing injuries the chance to get into something different, find something new, because obviously that part of your life you're sort of adapting, and that's the perfect chance and time to try new things. And weightlifting actually wasn't on my agenda for that week. I competed in, I won all the sports that I'd done. I think I done pool as in the Q sport. Done swimming, and I'd done archery.
Right.
And so I'd cleaned up across the week, done all right, because sport had always been the be all and end all for me, to be fair. Even pre and post injury, it's been the only thing that's really ever kept me captivated and just got a huge passion and love for it. And then I'd been given the geezer from our spinal unit. I'd been given a little bit of stick all week that I was stronger than him, and because playing rugby and whatnot, I was always in a gym, loved the gym.
Yeah.
And then on the Friday, I don't know whether it was my chat that got to him or what, but he fluffed out of it, and I sort of turned around and I was like, look, I've been in the gym before, I've lifted some weight, so I'll give it a go. And I think I ended up benching 137.5 kilos, which I was just like, it's 137.5 kilos, but it was the people from British Weightlifting that were there running the day in the event, the weightlifting event, were sort of taken back by it, considering I hadn't touched a barbell or touched a weight in the gym for at least the sort of 8 months that I was in hospital.
Yeah.
And it was just, and it went from there really. And I got a talent ID on that day, asked to come along again, but then it all went quiet, and I thought, they can't have been that interested, and must have been blowing my trumpet sort of thing. So I just thought nothing of it, and then it was someone from British Weightlifting was down at my university, Stuart Martin his name is, and he was like, big lad, like calling me from behind, and I've turned around, all right, Stu, because he used to work at the uni, so I knew of him, and he's like, we've been trying to get hold of you. What's been going on? Like, you've not been getting back to us, and I was like, I haven't had anything, and it turns out I'd actually given the wrong email. So I almost completely stitched myself up before it started, and then. Yeah, I come up to Loughborough where we are today, and I've not really looked back since, to be fair, mate. From a Para Powerlifting point of view, it's a massive part of my life, and it's something that I love to do. It's something that I'm glad is a part of my life, and mate, it's good. It's going well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously on your socials, you can see some of your lifts and that are fucking huge.
Yeah.
So you touched on it obviously at the start, where sort of your powerlifting journey began, obviously with the tragedy of spinal cord injury. Do you want to just go into how what happened with that?
Yeah. So I was completely able-bodied up until I was the age of 20, and I just finished my first year at university. So I went down to Bournemouth University, and I was never really. I was always smart enough to get through school and things like that, but I was class clown, some might call me. I didn't really ever apply myself. And I was too busy doing things that I look back now and I think, oh, what a waste of time that was. But once I I'd got to university the long way. I'd had to, because I messed around at school a bit. I didn't leave with what I should have left with, and so I went the long way. I went through college, done a bit of a night A level, and got into Bournemouth University. And it was probably the first place I've ever been to from an education point of view, from a life point of view, where I felt like I fully belonged. And it was honestly, I'd met some incredible friends, but I'm meeting people that I'm not used to. Because I'm from a place called Dartford, just outside of South East London, and it's not rife with opportunity. So I was meeting people from all over London, all over the country, that had much different lives to what I had had. Not saying I didn't have a good life, like my mum and my parents gave me a brilliant upbringing, but I felt like I belonged. So I was cruising through uni, cruised through first year, finally found a place where I belonged. And we was on, and it was our end of year summer ball, and we started at so I was part of the rugby set up down at Bournemouth. And we started at the start of the day at one of our seniors' houses. We'd done a bit of a call, give out a few awards for the season, Player of the Year, Fresher of the Year, all the how they go. And then we went into a pub called the Hop and Children. And as we was walking along there, my back's sort of started to go funny, and I thought, God, and I've had to like grab onto a wall, and I'm like, right, take a few deep breaths, I'm all right. But me being the person I was, I put it down to taking a hit a week previous at Bournemouth Sevens at a rugby festival. I took a hit and I come off and I was hobbling around a bit. And a week later we're going to the ball, and as my back's gone weak, and I've gone, it's all right. I would just crack on with it. That's what I was always like, to be fair, when it comes to injuries. And so yeah, the back's gone a bit weak, and I'm like, but it come back and it was fine. I was like, so I didn't think nothing of it. Then as we walked through Bournemouth, and we got to where the big university pre-party is at a place called Purbeck Halls, and I sort of rolled back the years a bit. I started being a class clown a little bit, and I was actually doing a worm in the middle of this big open courtyard, I guess.
Right.
And I started doing the worm, and all of a sudden, the bottom half of my body just stopped moving again. And this time I was a little bit more worried. So a couple of my senior men in a rugby setup pulled me up onto a salt bin and was like, right, let's sort this out a little bit. And like my legs, again, they come back. I was absolutely fine. But at this point, I was like, right, I'm going to carb the drink. I was like, I'm a bit dehydrated. So I just started necking some water. Again, everything come back. I thought it was absolutely fine. So we carried on with the day, and we walked around to the fire station, it was called, down in Bournemouth, where all the buses waited to take you up to Chapelgate, where the summer ball was. And me being me, just where I didn't really think about what I hadn't really thought or processed what had been happening during the day. And in the queue, I was getting crazy back pain. And I was like, to the point where like I weren't much of a crier when it comes to pain, but I was like, I had tears in my head, like, well, this is killing me, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But again, that slowly went away. So I got on a bus, went right up to the top of the back, like all the cool kids do, and and yeah, as we got about a stone's throw out from Chapelgate, we was just going into the entrance, and as you go into the entrance of Chapelgate, it's like a winding road sort of thing, and there's like little bumps on it, and we went over one of the bumps, and I explained it as like my left leg just started filling up with concrete. Like, it just started feeling so heavy to the point where I was like, right, something's a matter right now. So I've immediately panicked, and I've gone to pull myself up. Like, on the buses, you got the big metal bars with the buttons on, and I've tried to pull myself up on that. And as I've done that, my right leg started, as I said, to fill up with concrete. And then I've realised, then I'm like, my feet are stuck to the floor, because I'm trying to get up and go down, because I was worried at this point. And I couldn't move, my feet were stuck, and eventually I just collapsed. Sort of my whole body emptied, like bladder, bowels, everything just went, and it was just like, this is serious, this is crazy, and I was too shocked to just, be emotional, so I'm just laying there like, Jesus, and almost like, I'm sort of holding myself onto the seat, letting everyone get off the bus, and then I've almost then properly collapsed onto the floor. I was laid on the floor, and my first year of uni, I was known for being a bit of a joker at uni, and one of the security guards that does one of the local clubs come up and was just like, oh, it's McGarry, he's all right, he's pissing around again. And then they've obviously noticed that I haven't come down off the bus, so like someone's come up and like, you're not all right, are you? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. So anyway, the ambulance has rushed on, and it quickly become apparent that this was a pretty serious, something serious had happened. So yeah, they ended up having to cut me out the top of the bus, sent me down on a winch through with the fire brigade and into the back of an ambulance. At this point, all my friends have gone, so I'm completely on my own at the minute. And I remember just ringing my mum, and I rang my partner in the time of the bus, and they were asking me questions, and I'm just like, I haven't got a clue what's going on, but like, I was scared at that point.
Yeah.
And we got to Poole Hospital, and we literally come into the hospital, and they pretty much just turned us straight around, and they was like, we haven't got the means to deal with something of this severity. So I was blue lighted off to Southampton Hospital, and yeah, was sort of rushing in and out of things all the time. Like, pretty much didn't stop for about 48 hours, the test, all through the night, all through the day, constant. And then, yeah, I found out I had a T12 spinal cord injury, and pretty quickly, went through a phase in time where I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't really know how I was going to get out of this. For once in my life, I had no answers, and I put so many questions, and it was probably the scariest time of my life. And it was, 20 years old. All I'd never known was being physical, being sporty, being boisterous. Just like a 20-year-old kid was, and I was just starting on this new journey in my life of finding people that wanted to achieve things, and I was just like, well, I want to start achieving this and this, and it all come crashing down on the 3rd of June 2017 when I had my injury, and ended up spending from 3rd of June to the 22nd of September in hospital, and I actually, for an injury with the severity of mine, I actually left hospital way before I should, because it was just like, I'm going deep into the story here, but
it's fine. Go as deep as you like.
But I had there was one thing. So I sort of had things. The first couple of weeks I went through were crazy, like as you'd expect when you're that time. I didn't really want to be here anymore. Didn't want to exist in that way. Didn't want to exist with not knowing. With not doing the life that I knew.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was all so scary, so I was saying. But it all changed for me. One day I had an orange pill in my hand, and this was when I was in the Salisbury spinal unit. So we fast forward a little bit. I've left Southampton and went across to a spinal specialist unit in Salisbury, which was incredible. Even at the time, they were through some NHS cuts, so bodies were thin on the ground, but they were just incredible in terms of like little things, like they wasn't doing everything for me. So it was like, because it's so easy to fall into that thing of just letting everyone else do everything. Yeah. But what I quickly realised, if I do that, I'm forever going to be stuck. You're never gonna get out of it, and so it quickly changed for me. But anyway, the main thing that changed everything for me was an orange pill, and now I peeled this orange and I left it on a table for ages, and it was on my table by the bed. And don't get me wrong, I'm not the cleanest person in the world, but this particular orange pill sitting on this table was really getting to me. And because I had a little side room at Salisbury unit, because I wanted to push myself more than the average person, I was doing more, so they gave me a bit more privacy because I wanted to get out of that place. I wanted to get independent. I didn't want to be dependent on the nurses and carers and things like that. And all the nurses, the professionals could see that from quite early on. So anyway, I was like, sod it, I'm going to sort this orange pill out. So I've jumped up. Well, I didn't jump up, but I slowly clambered into my wheelchair. And at that time, I didn't have the balance or the know-how or the confidence, in a sense, to be able to touch the floor. Like I can now, I can do it all now. And the weird thing that people don't get this when I say it, and they're always quite shocked. But in every hospital you go in, whether it's a wheelchair ward or what, all the bins are foot pedals.
Yeah.
So I was on a spinal unit where every single person on that unit,
Every bin
has lost their use of their legs or has got limited use of their legs, and every single bin still was a push bin. So I had this orange pill, and obviously I couldn't get it into the bin. So I sat there, and I reckon I accumulated about 3 hours of just throwing my wheelchair up into little tiny wheelies, because that's all I couldn't really manage then, and just trying to land on the pedal of the bin, just trying to land, and I couldn't get it for ages. And I'm getting and everyone that knows me know I get frustrated with things. I can't let things beat me, and I'm there for ages. And anyway, I clocked it about 3 hours later. I landed on the pedal, and the bin shot open, and I put the orange pill in the bin. And I remember quickly after that, I got back in my bed, and I remember crying my eyes out with how frustrating that thing was. And I sat there and I was like, all I've had to do is put an orange pill in a bin. And it's just taken off my day. Like I'm knackered. Like I was knackered, it took off my day. But then that evening I remember sitting there, and at that time when I was doing a degree, and something my lecturer, Emma Kavanagh, her name was, had shown me was positive psychology. And I was reading something that night, and it was analysing challenge versus threat. Right. And it couldn't have been more, that was a message for me, intended for me at that time, because in my head then, I turned to look at the orange pill, and I'm sitting there going, God, this can't be my life. Like, that's just taking me half a day. I'm useless. I can't do nothing. But then that's when my whole mindset to the whole thing changed. Was like, no, this is just like, it's not about, I can't do that now. It's about, how am I going to do it? How am I going to do it differently? Yeah. And it almost, my whole life become a challenging. And I think that, and that's why that orange pill, I owe the world to that orange pill, because that was such a rememberable moment in my recovery. Like, as you move on and you start doing new things, like you forget things, but that's always stuck with me, because you know what, that was a day that orange pill changed my life, in a sense that my life become a challenge, and I generally, and that mindset's carried me to here where I am today, and it's going to carry on past this day into new heights, hopefully, you know. So
yeah. I mean, with it being the challenge that it was, and you had to, you know, persist with it over the 3 hours, it would have made it like that sort of, that point in it, like milestone, I suppose you could call it. It makes it sort of that much sweeter, because although it took you that long, the end result was that you did achieve it. Do you know what I mean? If you'd have been there for 5-6 hours and you just didn't give up, then it's probably a different story, because you've got to have that. It's the same with everyone, really. Do you know what I mean? Like for myself, I now have got my mindset. I got to like 18 stone a year and a half ago. I've said this on the podcast before. And yeah, I've lost a load of weight now, into my gym, jiu-jitsu, and, you know, playing football and that all the time, because I want to outlast my kids as long as possible. And that's the same with me now. I'm like, what can I do to challenge myself each day, to push myself, so that, you know, my daughter's 13 now. When she's 18, Dad's still going to be outperforming her. 25, still up. Do you know what I mean? I want to be pushing it till I'm sort of 50. And beyond, I'll still do it, but obviously I'm under no illusions that your body will deteriorate and you just can't compete, you know, at that level. But when you were going through that and you had your 3 hours of doing it, how many times were you like, I'm just going to stop?
Never.
Good.
Because you know what it is with me? And my friends will probably vouch for me on this. You can't beat me.
Yeah.
And I sit there, and a lot of the time it's not a lot of the time. A lot of the time it's a good thing, but it can be a bad thing as well. Like I can sit there with my friends and I'll just go at something because I think I'm so right. But when I get back, I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe I weren't so right. But nothing will ever beat me, and that's what I say to people. That people can be more talented than me, they can be more stronger than me, can be faster than me, cleverer than me. But you'll never say the word quit after I would. And I think that's I know, and that's what got me through that because that early stage. There was so much opportunity to quit, and I'm surrounded by people. Like there were another person I remember on a ward. He used to refuse to walk on crutches. Like you're in a spinal unit, and he'd got enough back that he got his crutches, and he refused to walk on them. And that used to blow my mind. Because my dream, I'd give anything to be able to walk on a set of crutches.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I used to sit there every day, and I remember I had an heated argument with him one day. Because I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you've given up. You ain't even got the hardest battle in it. Like there's people people around him. That was just a thing for me. And then, but then I had like some older friends in a spinal unit that. Once after that day, I was just like every morning I was like, I've got to get up and do something, because it's easy to drop in and press. You know, hospital, you press the button, someone comes running to you.
Yeah,
and it's easy to slip into that. And you say, but I started getting up, and a few of my friends on the ward were older people. And so I used to go down in the morning. I put the toothpaste on the toothbrush and do things like that. And that's just ended up what got me out of it. But I think it's the ability to hang in there, hang in the fight. That's a big thing for me, and I'm surrounded by people now that do that on a day-to-day basis. But it's too easy to give up. It's too easy to give up these days. It's too easy to go, no, I'll go to something new. But even though people don't want to, they don't want to go into something new. They love what they're doing, but they haven't got the grit to just struggle. And that's what it was. Like the first. There's still struggle now. There's still struggle in my life every day now. Like people think because I'm a Paralympic pathway athlete and I'm doing big things with GB and things like that. People think it's all, and I've represented England.
Sunshine and rainbows.
They think I'm living a dream, which I am in a sense. I'm living the best possible life I could have had. Yeah, and I genuinely believe that. I don't feel like after going through what I've gone through, there's not a better job I could have than representing my country all around the world and doing something I love. But that's what when I look back at the end of my career, I'm not bothered if people go, he was the most talented bloke you've ever seen. Yeah. But or he was the most skillful, or that doesn't bother me. I want people to look at my career and go, do you know what? He pushed every single boundary that he could. Yeah. There wasn't one thing that he could have pushed an inch further than he did. Yeah. Do you know what? And that will carry me to success one day. I know it because I've got raw potential there. But what's so frustrating is if you don't tap into that potential because you don't want to work hard enough. So that was something that was installed in me from a kid, from my parents. Like, never been the brightest, richest, smartest family in the world, but do you know what? We know how to work hard, and that's and that's something that got me through that period. And so and you can make it to question. The word giving up never crossed my mind, and it was just like, and I always say to some of my mates, like, I'm glad it was me that had that injury and not some of the people around me, because I know I could have got through it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I look at some people and I think, do you know what I mean? But I know I had what it took to get through that injury, and I'm still living to tell the tale now. Yeah,
I mean, it's amazing, like, how positive you are about, obviously, like, what's happened. You've drawn a line in the sand. You've gone, right, this is my reality. It doesn't matter how I feel, or, this is it. Whatever happened before, it is clean slate. We're working towards, as much of a life, in your wheelchair as you can have. You're living it, obviously, to the max, doing sport and stuff as your job. And like you said, you're living the best you can live with your situation, and I need you to ring my daughter and have it out of her at the minute, because she's all the talent in the world, but her work ethic drives me crazy. And she hates being shouted out on the podcast as well. But we'll get her to listen to this one. So you once you've done it in the spinal, how long were you in the spinal unit for?
So I transferred into the spinal unit on the 22nd of June, and I left on the 22nd of September. So that's July, August. It's 3 months.
3 months.
And someone with my spinal injury shouldn't really leave there less than sort of 6 months.
Okay.
But it was from early on. That wasn't an option for me because I was at university at the time, as I said earlier, and I didn't want to miss a day of uni.
Yeah.
And I actually, the day I left hospital, I moved straight back into a flat at university on my own. Didn't go home. Didn't go and spend time with family. Didn't try and recuperate. I needed to get on with my life. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave uni. It was the best thing that I'd ever done in my life. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. As I said earlier, it was finally somewhere that I thought, you know what, I'm at home here. Do you know what I mean? And it was just, and I loved it. So I was, in my head, I was like, my lectures start on the Monday, it was 22nd or Friday, 23rd. Monday the 25th, my lectures started again. And I was like, I'm not missing it.
Yeah.
I'm not missing that day. Anyway, left. My friend Sasha Pond from uni picked me up from the hospital, and I went straight back there. And just took it in my. Don't get me wrong, it was tough. I'm not going to sit here and say, do you know what? I smashed it.
Yeah,
it was tough. Like, I had some incredible friends, and down in Bournemouth, because obviously I'm from just outside South East London, so it was a long way away. So family were there for every step of the way by phone, but I had some incredible friends that I've made at Bournemouth that were at uni with me, and it's almost like I'll be forever indebted to some of my friends in that first year, because it was they've done a lot of things that you don't have to do to your 20-year-old pal at that age. Do you know what I mean? And like helped me out in ways that I could never ever, no amount of money could repay or replace. You know, and it was I had some real good people with brilliant hearts around me, and as I said, it wasn't easy. But you know what? There weren't a minute, there weren't a second in time where I thought, oh, I ain't got this in me. I ain't got this in me. I need to go home and just revert back to sort and bundle through life almost. Do you know what I mean? And I ended up graduating. Didn't submit one extension, one mitigating circumstance, nothing. Graduated when I was meant to, and it was all accumulated by the most amazing graduation. I sort of went across the stage and the place erupted, and you know, like, whatever I achieve in my career, and hopefully that's medals on the biggest stages. That'll always be up there in the greatest days of my life, because I'm getting goosebumps now talking about it. But it was a crazy just to see the whole place erupt, and it was just like everyone in that room had knew what I'd been through on the face of it. Not personally, there was a few people that knew what I was going through day to day, but they knew what I'd overcome to get there, and it was it was just incredible day, mate. Incredible.
Yeah. And having that suffering as well just makes the victory that much more sweeter, because you know the hardship that you've gone through, what you've, you know, where you've been, especially in your own headspace, and then to, you know, have achieved it. But you're, you know, how you look, your outlook on life, and how headstrong you are. I wouldn't have, you know, for a second. Just obviously we've only met today. Yeah. But like how you are and how you carry yourself is like you're a winner. You only want to win, and gold's the only, you know, thing in your mind. Yeah. So when you left your the spinal unit, was that you could pretty much do everything yourself? You were self-sufficient?
So I left the spinal unit fully independent, but it was still tough.
Yeah.
It was still tough at that point, because I hadn't found a gym at this point. Like, I took myself up to the hospital gym at that time, but obviously once they're like, oh, don't do that, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. So you're limited to what you can do. So I was fully independent.
So you got your orange peel in the bin in sub 3 hours.
Sub 3 hours, mate. And I was still, everything was still taking its time to do it stuff. But that ended up being going back to uni, because like you leave the safety of the four walls of the hospital. And although you think you're like smashing it, being really independent, like you're still getting things done for you here and there. As much as you didn't want to, it's just the way it was. Like, they're still changing your bed and whatnot. Yeah. Disclaimer: to be fair, I've lived on my own now. I've had my own place now. Mum still comes in to change my bed. So I'm not saying I've mastered that bit, but in terms of like, I'm pretty neat in a chair now. Like, I can do everything I need to do, and probably better than I need to do it. Bumping up and down steps, and I've also got some incredible friends that carried me up like 20, 30 steps, and do you know what I mean? It's just so, we do all right now. And as I said, the only thing that I identify myself as not being like my mates is the fact that I'm sat down. Do you know what I mean? Because everything else I do exactly the same as them, other than kicking a football or whatever. But like, yeah, like everything's the same other than I'm just sat down. So yeah, it was that year though. Yeah, there was a lot of struggle in that first year back at uni. It was as I said, I look back now and it was probably the best thing I ever done though, because it forced me to be independent. It forced my hand. I didn't have the option to go, can you do that for me? Because although I had loads of friends around me in their student halls all over the place, I was living on my own. So it was like I had to do things for myself. I've burnt a few holes in my legs and whatnot where I started learning cooking and all that. But I got there eventually, mate. And then completely independent. Never had a carer. Never had nothing. So it's one of my small wins, I think.
From obviously now a wheelchair user's point of view, what was something that you, I mean, like most of us, you overlooked or never gave a thought to as an able-bodied person that then hit you? Like, do you know what I mean? That you were then like, fucking hell, I didn't realise this.
Just probably like other people's perceptions. Like, it's crazy how useless some people view people that just sat down. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. I found myself in arguments all the time. Now I'm just like no one can really come at me now, because it's just like when people try and have a dig at me in the gym or whatever, I'm just like, live where I lived. And we'll have the conversation or things like that. I've got a bit, but back then when I had nothing and I was just like, I was just a geezer in a wheelchair, and I had nothing to sort of show for it, and I was fresh. It was just like, because that was half my fight, really. That was half my fight. I was like, how dare you think I can't do that?
Yeah.
And that was, I used to get fuming over it. I used to get so angry at people. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, don't do it for me. I can do it. I'll be fine. I'll be sweet. And I also had friends in that would push me to do it. But that was beside, like, that would be my biggest thing. That coming from being fully able, living a normal life as such, to being in a wheelchair, it was just like the lack of understanding of the capabilities of someone like me. Do you know what I mean? It's like I come up against able-bodied people in a lot of stuff still, and like I still smoke a lot of people on different tasks.
Yeah.
But to the average person, they're like, he's in a chair, he's redundant almost. He's done, he's finished. But it's like, and I think that was the biggest thing for me, because it was just like I'd never really paid much attention to it, because I'd never had anyone in my family that had any form of disability, so it was just never really part of my world. And I was probably a bit ignorant towards it, to be fair.
You say ignorant. I think that most people in their life, most people are busy with their shit. Do you know what I mean? Their life is their life. Like on a day-to-day, it's the same as, like, obviously not to the same extent, but when like if I catch my finger in the door, or trap it in cages, whatever, you soon realise how much you use that finger. Like if you hit your index finger, whatever, and you're out, and you're like, you've got to try and, it just completely messes you up. Obviously, it's nowhere near the extent. I get that, but I think it is. It's not sort of a lack of empathy or anything towards it. It's just that it's like you said earlier. You weren't around anyone that had it, so it's just not in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it just wasn't a part of my world. And then when it became it almost made sense. Like the things you read in that, like about when, I don't know, people with spinal injuries or something say like this happened and that happened, and you're like, but then you have the injury and you're like, this is actually so annoying. Like, it's so annoying. Like, and that was probably the biggest thing for me. I was just getting, like, don't get me wrong, I haven't got the best temper in the world anyway. Like, I've got a short fuse, but I was getting so annoyed at, like, just the sheer ignorance of, like, he needs help, everything I'd done, and it just weren't like that. So it was probably the other people's perceptions that, and as I said, that's that's a big driving force for me now. That
100%. Someone like you, that would have burnt an absolute furnace inside you, and you're like, right, I'm doing this purely out of spite to prove you 100%. Wrong.
It was a pride. Every time it was almost like every time someone offered me help, or it was a dent to my ego, or it was a kick to my pride. So it was like I had to become fully independent. It wasn't a choice in my mind. Like there wasn't a choice. That it was a non-negotiable. I had to become fully independent.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't cope with that. The
being a burden to someone.
Yeah, that and just the sort of the opinions of people. I was just like, nah, this ain't it. And that's what sort of sparked the fire, the initial fire in my belly, really.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think that's a perfect time to close out this week's episode. Do you want to give everyone your social medias and whatnot?
Yeah, so you can catch me on Instagram's my main feed, _Liam8. And yeah, that's about. And I've got a TikTok that's just started, but that's Strength in Adversity.
It's a weird world, TikTok.
Yeah, mate, it's crazy. It's still getting used to it. To be fair, I haven't got all the dances on lock, but yeah, if you wanna view some of my main stuff about spinal cord injury and training and whatnot is on Instagram. But yeah, my training stuff as well is also just started launching on TikTok.
Brilliant. Right, well, thank you for coming on today, Liam. It's been very interesting, and I'm definitely looking forward to next week's
Perfect, mate.
episode.
Thank you.
All right, see you later, everybody.